Hello, you noble people. My name is the Noble, and this video is going to be very special. Not only is this my first theory video for chapter 3 and 4, but this is also a new era for theories. We're going to have such a short amount of time to do theories. We're only going to have 1 year until chapter 5 comes out, meaning theories have to be a little bit, slower scale, especially with all the information we got from chapter 3 and 4. The theories aren't going to necessarily be insane like the Woody theory or whatever, and this is my first time doing a theory that I haven't seen anywhere else. This is my Asgore theory. Asgore is obviously a very big character in Undertale, in Deltarune, and I feel like he's going to be one of the most important characters in Deltarune in chapter 5. But first, we're going to have to break down his character to understand why he is going to be the most important. Asgore's character in Undertale specifically is very interesting because we don't really get too much time with him. We get some time with him at the pacifist ending, and also during his fight before and after we get some stuff. But most of everything else is just stories that we hear from other characters in the game. We first get introduced to him via Toriel saying that Asgore will kill us if we leave the ruins, which obviously gives the impression that he's going to be possibly the big bad. But then that sentiment is changed when we learn from other characters that he does care. Monster Kid says that Asgore went to their school and actually helped. Papyrus says that he's a big fleshy pushover, and then in Undyne, you can see that he actually really cared for Undyne and was trying to train her. He was so happy when she was actually able to land a blow on him because she was improving. He's a good and caring individual, but with the case of him trying to kill a bunch of humans to open the barrier, it's more or less not because he wants to. That's very obviously stated that he doesn't want to do that. It's more out of obligation to the promise he made to his people. It is very clearly stated that he only really declared the war against humans to get their souls, to give people hope. Out of anger, the humans took everything from them in one night, and that he would have said that just to free everyone. As a matter of fact, it was such a rage-filled promise that even Toriel states in the ending of the Pacifist route, if Asgore really wanted to follow through with what he wanted to do, after one human, he would have enough power to cross the barrier, get souls, and then come back. But instead, he didn't. He just sat in the emptiness and didn't act upon anything. Asgore is cowardly in that fact that he made a statement, and since it gave people hope, he's not going to try and correct his mistake. He's going to try and live with it, or try and make it different. That is why his character in Deltarune is so interesting to me, because with Undertale, he's just kind of living in the mistake. He's wanting to try and just be like, oh, well, I already said this. I guess if this is giving people hope, I'll stay the way and same. With Deltarune, he is trying to fix his mistake, unlike what he does in Undertale. In the church segment in chapter 4, you can talk to Rudy about Asgore, where Toriel will have a conversation where she's grateful for Carol's financial support of Asgore. Now, she also says that she doesn't wish she support his you-know-what, and that kind of plays off as a bit where she throws juice at Rudy's face, but we don't really know what the full story of one more word or what is it she is mad. The you-know-what. What is the thing that Toriel is upset by? Obviously, her throwing juice in Rudy's face has played off of a bit, but at least means that it means something to Toriel, and later we learn that this is most likely Asgore trying to find Des. In the flashback scene of chapter 3, we see Des leave, then Carol, and then Asgore. Now, it makes sense that Carol, Rudy, Noelle, and all of them would leave first, but the fact that Asgore leaves the third and it's not Rudy with Carol when Des leaves obviously mean he is associated in some way. And this is even more improved upon by when you go inspect his flower shop and dialogue that you can actually get in Noelle's house during that section in the Light World. When investigating the back door of the Flower King shop, you can see through the basement window window, see a corkboard covered with tons of paper and documents litter the floor. Now, that doesn't seem like anything too big, but do remind you that there is not really a corkboard in Asgore's shop when we go and visit there in chapter 1. That's not really a thing that is there. We just have the old TV, there's some papers on the floor, the obvious flowers that look like these souls from Undertale, but not necessarily a corkboard, which gives the idea of kind of like the conspiracy theory board, and this can even be proved and amplified by having the same thing appear in Noelle's house in Carol's room. When we are in the Noelle household, we can find Asgore in the bathroom cleaning. He'll say his normal dum-de-dum, and then, phew, cleaning sure works up an appetite. I wonder if the kitchen has any treats for me. Not now, I can't afford to take a break. Now, more than ever, I need to concentrate. Settle this once and for all. I've got to go look again. Going to Carol's room will get you more dialogue. We're almost there, aren't we, old friend? This time for sure, Tori will finally see. See what really happened. That I just wanted to protect everyone. And this time, she'll have to believe me. They all will. Then we'll all be a happy family again, won't we? It sure is beautiful, isn't it? This black shard. Okay, let's unpack all of that one at a time. First off, it is very obvious that he is working with Carol. Whether that is working with Carol as the knight, working with Carol to find Des, working with Carol just genuinely, it's very obvious he is working with Carol. He is doing the cleaning of the house to actually just pay off his normal house to begin with, or his flower shop, because he doesn't really sell his flowers. And he has access to Carol's room, which not even really Noelle can go into. So he has to be working with Carol in at least some way in order to find Des. Now, next up, you can tell that he is trying to do this out of wanting to have the family back together. He wants people to believe him. Whatever happened to Des was unbelievable. Something that no one could understand. Toriel wouldn't believe him. Maybe Azrael didn't believe him. Maybe Rudy didn't really believe him. So when he's still trying to find and search for stuff, that is why Toriel doesn't support his you-know-what, because it kind of feels like he is obsessively trying to find Des, even though it looks like at least Toriel and Rudy think that she might be actually dead, while Carol and Asgore think she actually is missing. Now, with the last thing Asgore said about something that is beautiful, isn't it? The black shard. Now, this kind of freaked a lot of people out because we didn't know really what it was. And right now, there are kind of 3 theories that I want to go over. And for the purposes, I will also lead my personal own conclusion, at least down one of these possible routes, because I want there to have options with my theory. I don't want my theory to be kind of closed-minded when it becomes the possible options. The first one is that this is a shadow crystal, the thing that the hidden bosses have. Jevil, Spamton, the knight has it, and then while Gerson does have it, he doesn't actively use it to power himself up. This could mean that Asgore could be a hidden boss of some kind in a future chapter. The other one is that the Black Shard is actually a thing that you get from defeating the Knight. The Black Shard is a dagger-like shard of a black knife strikes with the dark element of enemies. It is Chris's strongest weapon, and as a matter of fact, it actually has a stat tied to it when you fight the Spawn and the Titan at the end of chapter 4. If you use your axe and banish it with gaining enough TP, they get banished, and that statistic gets added to Chris. However, if you attack them with this black knife, you get a statistic called Slain, which might play a part later down the line. But the main thing with the Black Shard is that it does not have a Light World variant. Most of Chris's weapons have a Light World variant, like the Spooky Sword is a Halloween sword, the Saber 10 is a Cactus Needle. However, the Black Shard in the Light World is just the normal Black Shard. Now, this is obviously insanely big because this means Asgore has confronted the Knight. Whether you think the Knight is Carol or Des, he has to at least have confronted the Knight, or maybe he has found a resource to make something like this shard. But since it's a shard and like it gets chipped off, I'm assuming he would have had to have fought the Knight at some point, maybe in his own Dark World, and that is how he got this weapon. Now, there is one more kind of theory that people have with this, and this actually has to do with the secret cutscene that you can get in chapter 3 with the Gacha ball machine if you enter 1225. 1225 is supposed to be Christmas Day or December holiday, and after entering this into the Gacha machine, the screen goes blue and Susie and Rouse disappear. It is just Chris. You can then walk into the machine where you enter kind of a really weird area. You're not bound to any of the locations that you are seeing, the pathways you can walk on. However, you can clip out of bounds and go anywhere you want to go while a rendition of Lost Girl starts playing on guitar. You walk around here for a little bit until you find another Gacha machine. This time it is a tiny blue one. Interacting with it gives you a capsule. Inside there is something hard like lacquer. It is small dark triangle. You try to take it, but it slipped through your hand, and then you couldn't find it anymore. You couldn't find your hand. And then it cuts back to the room with Susie and Rouse nowhere to be seen. And leaving restores them, and this permanently locks you out of this gacha game machine. So I also would not recommend doing this if you are going to fight the Knight, because then you would not be able to get any of the revivements that you will need to fight them. Now, people have pointed out that this could very obviously be how Asgore got a black shard. Maybe he did something similar to this somehow or whatever. Maybe his hand doesn't disappear. However, a lot of people, me and myself included, have pointed out this is most likely a guitar pick. Something hard like lacquer, and it's very specifically said that it's a triangle shape, while the other black shards aren't specifically stated to be, oh, it's a black triangle, I can tell what this is, while the other one is just kind of a weird piece of a shard. It is described as a shard, not necessarily a triangle. However, I did want to mention it because I have heard some people talk about this in relation to Asgore. And last but certainly not least, we have stuff in the Dark World of Chapter 4 that are related to Asgore. That being his part in the prophecy and what Gerson will say will happen in Chapter 5 of Lord of the Hammer. The Asgore prophecy states, the flower man trapped by Asylum, with a picture of him holding a flower. Now, it is good to note that the picture of him holding the flower is him in his Undertale outfit, with the crown and the big shoulder and cape. Meaning that this is either how Asgore is going to look like in a Dark World eventually, because when Toriel was in the Dark World, she had on a crown as well, or this is in some relation to Undertale. However, I highly doubt that Deltarune is going to try and convene with Undertale, because Toby has already explicitly said that that's not going to happen. During Gerson's boss fight, he talks about the Lord of the Hammer chapters of the book series, which is also referencing the prophecy of Deltarune itself. The first one states that the heroes defeat the Dark King and stop the dragon. The second one is about the Queen, and then so on and so forth. So these are very obviously parodying and talking about the chapters of Deltarune. However, he mentions Chapter 5, which we haven't gotten yet. Chapter 5, The Field of Pink and Gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy. Now, obviously, this is going to lead into Asgore. Asgore is one of the characters who's associated the most with flowers and with fire, as that's his primary attack in Undertale. However, the two things stick out about this chapter. One, the fact that this is an inferno of jealousy, meaning Asgore is somehow jealous of someone or something, and also the pink and gold aspect of the garden. If you've been around Deltarune, you know of image.friend, the person and thing most commonly associated with pink and yellow. However, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I know some people have suggested that maybe it's still relevant, but considering the Mike kind of secret boss, funny little fight that you have, it's obviously just Toby poking fun at people delving too deep into the theories. So for the sake of this video, I'm not personally going to dive into it. However, this leaves us with all the evidence shown. And what is this theory video about now? Now that I have all this evidence out here, now that I have showcased it, what is this theory actually about? This theory is going to be about Asgore opening a dark fountain with his black shard and becoming the main boss of Chapter 5. Now, that is a very, very weighted statement, but that is why there's around 16 minutes of me talking about setup for this video, because I think this is just a natural progression of Asgore's character, given his themes through the other chapters of Deltarune and how he acts in Undertale. In Undertale, he acts out of rage, impulse, and he doesn't regress his choice. He sticks with his choice even if it put everyone in despair, and Toriel rightfully calls him out in Undertale. As while in Deltarune, he has his choice might seem more noble, instead of Undertale where he's just kind of sitting there waiting for the human to come. In this case, he's actively trying to find death, but to a detriment to himself. Imagine that if Rudy, Toriel, maybe even Noelle, though there isn't any evidence to support Noelle necessarily thinking Des is maybe dead, but the idea that there's someone dead and you have a family member who has been divorced and is constantly trying to search, constantly trying to make things how they once were, being stuck in the past like that is not healthy for someone in the slightest. So what happens when someone reaches a breaking point with trying to constantly find whoever they're trying to find, trying to seek something? There's going to be a breaking point. And that is why I think that this Garden Shard and Inferno, or Inferno of Jealousy, is going to be Asgore, and the garden is going to be Flowey, or more specifically, the flowers he has in his shop. Now, obviously, the Flower Man trapped by Asylum in the prophecy is referring to Asgore. However, the most interesting thing about this prophecy is the trapped in Asylum part, because what Asylum in this definition would actually mean for Asgore. The definition of Asylum is either someone protected by a national government for their native country. However, the one that we're going to use is someone in an institution offering shelter or support for who are mentally ill. Now, obviously, Asgore wouldn't be considered mentally ill, but the idea is that an asylum is a safe place, a safe location. And if Asgore is trapped by that, this would mean this fits the themes of Deltarune with escapism. Escapism via board games in Chapter 1. Escapism via the internet for Chapter 2. Escapism via the TV in Chapter 3. And then escapism via religion in Chapter 4. So Chapter 5 would be your own personal headspace or your own comfort in who you talk to. We learn in chapter 3, Tana has kind of been broken via the result of what is going around him. He could hear the family fighting. He had impacts happen to him because of what happened with deaths. He is an example of a Darkner getting a relation with what is going on around with him. And that kind of broke his character to a certain extent. So to have flowers that Asgore has stated he directly talks to as their good conversation opens up a lot of possibilities when it comes to what these characters could be, and that is why I said I feel like they're going to become the new Flowey. We know in Undertale that Flowey talks to Papyrus, giving him flattery, advice, predictions, and this could go the same way for Asgore. His flowers could become Darkners and give him this advice, and try and trap him in this asylum. Whisper him sweet nothings, try and flatter him, say you don't need to leave, protect the fountain, making Asgore the big bad, making him the actual obstacle we will have to face in chapter 5. Now, what does this have to do with the actual prophecy stating? It says the Garden of Pink and Gold is charred away in an inferno of jealousy. And while there isn't really any too much, there might just be a garden that is pink and gold, and we do know there's a golden flower. However, I think that the jealousy aspect is going to be Sans. Now, I know that might sound weird, but Sans' character is interesting because he kind of acts differently in Deltarune than he does in Undertale. Well, yes, in Undertale and Deltarune, he still is jokester and jokes around a lot. We really haven't, seen him, move around or, party, I guess, necessarily like he was doing at the end of Chapter 4, which made a lot of people realize instead of Sans coming from Undertale and teleporting back to the Deltarune universe, which is some people believe, this is probably Sans before he's ever been to Undertale. Meaning that this would be a younger version of Sans who hasn't went through everything with, timeline resets and stuff. So he's still lively and actually has stuff to do. So the idea that Asgore is going to get so jealous that he's going to burn down the Dark World, lash out at those flowers that are trapping him in the asylum. His asylum his escapism is breaking, it's shattering. The idea that he lashes out is a thing Asgore has done. He has lashed out in anger after what happened to Azrael and the other fallen human. Now, obviously, a death of a child is probably going to be bigger, but for Asgore, learning that Toriel has moved on, and that any fragment of hope he had to try and rebuild what they had is now gone, is probably gonna devastate him. And that is how I think Asgore will make the Dark World. I believe that he will realize what is going on with Sans and Toriel and run to his asylum, run to his flowers, and then make the Dark Fountain. Perhaps he has learned about Dark Fountains from investigating what is going on with deaths, causing him to make a Dark Fountain. And it gets to a point that during the chapter that the flowers, while they are trying to give him advice and flattery, say the wrong thing, causing him to burn everything down. And if you even want probably almost 100% solid proof that this theory is really good, the prophecy actual images have a index number and an ID name in the code, like what the object actually is, and for each of the bosses, they actually have a name beside them. Now, as King does not have one, the first one as boss 1 is the Queen's Chariot cannot be stopped, as Tenna would then have an index of boss 2, and then the Flower Man trapped by Asylum is in the code stated as boss 3. Which to me is proof that Asgore is going to be a boss or an obstacle mini-boss in some way. There's no way Toby would write that down because he could have just written Flower Man, Asgore, like anything. The fact that it specifically states boss 3 makes me feel like it's gonna be 3. King isn't in there because Queen doesn't have anything in the prophecy, and the Knight really isn't in there because while they were a threat in chapter 4, they weren't necessarily the main boss. If anything, the Titans would be considered a main boss, but they weren't in the prophecy as well. So this pretty much confirms, at least to me, with all the other evidence I have gathered, that Asgore is going to play a very, very, very big part in Chapter 5, and a lot of people seem to think so. As I was working on this video, which took a lot longer than I thought about, a couple more videos actually came out that probably got to the point that I was trying to make quicker, but I had an immense a lot of fun trying to make this theory. I had to go get a bunch of footage, do a bunch of research, dive into the code for stuff, but I had so much fun making this. If you wanted me to try and make a continuation of this own theory, I do have some ideas that could sprout off of this with certain aspects. I kind of haven't really even touched on if Asgore kind of knows Carol and stuff, and what Carol's plans are, because there's some other very, very big stuff. But as of right now, I am very happy with this video, and I hope you all enjoyed it too. Stay noble. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.